Every year we rotate which crucifixion story we read aloud on Palm Sunday, according to the 3-year cycle of the Revised Common Lectionary. Currently we are in year C, so it is a Luke year. Next year we will return to Matthew, and in 2027 we will be back to Mark, which we read last year. Mark's gospel, especially his account of Holy Week, you might remember from last year, was very political. Mark described Jesus' final days as a series of political demonstrations and counter-demonstrations, which eventually led those in power to arrest Jesus as an enemy of the state and execute him for treason. Mark's Jesus dies in despair, crying out, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And after he died, the Roman centurion said aloud, "Truly this man, and not the emperor, is God's son." But this year, Luke's gospel is less concerned with Jesus as a political revolutionary and more concerned with Jesus as an innocent man, one without sin, a wise and kind teacher who was unjustly put to death by a corrupt system. In Luke, the Roman centurion says, "Truly, this man was innocent." Luke's Jesus dies with more peaceful words. First, he prayed, "Father, forgive them, for they don't know what they are doing." And the last words he says from the cross are, "Father, into your hands I commend my spirit." This prayer, which we recognize from the Psalms and from our own Compline prayers, was often prayed right before bed in Jesus' time. Think, "Now I lay me down to sleep. Into your hand, Lord, I commend my spirit." Despite his pain, his suffering, and humiliation, Jesus is praying as if he is quietly going to sleep. But one aspect of the two stories that remains incredibly similar between Mark and Luke is Peter. Peter is determined in both stories to stay with Jesus until the very end. In Mark, he declared, "Even though all will become deserters, I will not." And today, in Luke's version of the story, Peter says, "Lord, I am ready to go with you to prison and even to death." But both times, Jesus tells Peter that before the rooster crows with the sunrise, Peter will deny him 3 times. And so he does. Peter had been trying to keep his word, following at a distance and huddling in the courtyard by the fire, trying to see what was happening. But while he's there, 3 times he is accused and 3 times he denies. "I do not know him. I am not one of them. I do not know what you are talking about." And as he was still speaking, the rooster crowed, and Peter remembered what Jesus had said and went away weeping. We don't see Peter again in the story until after Jesus is dead. In the end, he abandoned Jesus after all. Peter is often regarded as one of the greatest of the 12 disciples. He is brave, passionate, a great leader, a little reckless, and he eventually becomes the rock on which Christ builds the church. But as we've seen today, Peter still made terrible mistakes and suffered awful failures. In the moment when it counted, Peter lost his courage, and even after talking up such a big game, still failed. He's so very human that way, so very relatable. When the servant girl saw Peter and declared this man was also with him, Peter's response was to say, "I do not know him." And while this was a lie, he did know Jesus. In a way, perhaps it was also true. Perhaps Peter really didn't know the truth about Jesus. Maybe really didn't know until the very end who he was really following and what the mission was all about. Even though Peter left his whole life behind to follow Jesus for 3 years, maybe he still didn't fully understand this man who would become his teacher and his friend. In a way, maybe Peter is confessing to this servant girl, telling his secret truth. I do not know him. And so I wonder, would any of us have to say the same? How many of us, despite spending years and years of our lives trying to follow Jesus, practicing Christianity, trying to be people of the way, to walk the way of love, still don't really know Jesus, this man whom we follow? Jesus, the innocent man. Jesus, the revolutionary, the wise teacher. Jesus, the Son and incarnation of God, whose life and teachings are at the center of our faith. How many of us might have to say the same? I do not know him. Maybe all of us at some point in our lives. And so, my friends, if asking yourself that question hurt your heart just a little bit, never fear, for we are Christians, and this is the gospel. There is always good news. The good news is that today is as good a day as any to begin. There's no better day, in fact, than today. Today, each of us can decide that we want to know Jesus more, to study, to pray, to read about and discuss his life, to listen to and ponder his teachings. All of us can, and we can do it together. Together we share each other's burdens and make each other stronger. We encourage each other, pray for one another. We take care of each other. We walk this way of love together. And today is the perfect day to start. Today marks the beginning of Holy Week. This week, we are all invited to walk in the footsteps of Jesus. And there is no greater opportunity to get to know him than this week. Starting today with our own procession and our palm branches, we begin to experience the story of Jesus' last week of life. Each service from today on leads into the next. After today's triumphant entry into Jerusalem, on Thursday, we gather with Jesus for his final meal with his friends, when he washes their feet and asks them to remember him through bread and wine. That night ends with betrayal from Judas and denial by Peter, and so the service ends in dark and silence. The story picks up again on Friday when we walk the Stations of the Cross at noon and pray together at 7 p.m. That day is our most solemn day in the church year, a day of mourning. Then the story comes to a climax on Saturday night at the great vigil of Easter, when we will gather, light the first fire, and begin the journey from the dark of the tomb to the light of the resurrection. It is that resurrection and the journey from life to death to life again that we will celebrate on Easter, our most holy day. Some moments in these services are somber, like today's Passion reading. And that is because we must walk through the sadness of Good Friday to really experience the shocking and miraculous joy of Easter. Each service is an experience of stories and songs, sights and sounds. And we are invited to experience them all. Each service will give you another glimpse into the life and heart of Jesus of Nazareth. He yearns for a deep relationship with each of us, to know us and have us know him in return, so that when our time comes, we will say, of course I know him. So as our friends at the Iona community say, come, you have much faith, and you who would like to have more. Come, you who have been here often, and you who have not been for a long time. Come, you who have tried to follow Jesus, and you who have failed. Come, because it is Christ himself who invites us to meet him and know him here.